Hey guys, welcome back. So finally, after weeks of waiting and wondering, we have our hands on Picard Countdown comic issue number 3, the final comic in this series where we finally get to find out what's going on with this Romulan evacuation. So let's take a look at the final installment of this Picard Countdown comic, break down the story, go through it and see how things might be affected in Star Trek Picard. This was the story so far. After discovering that a looming supernova threatens the entirety of the Romulan Empire, the Federation has launched an evacuation mission of unparalleled scale to rescue the inhabitants of every threatened planet in Romulan space before the supernova blows. Admiral Jean-Luc Picard travels to a Romulan colony to plan the evacuation of the 10,000 inhabitants living there, only to make a shocking discovery. The planet is home to 5 million native beings that the Romulans intend to leave behind to die. Picard is imprisoned by the governor before he can alert the Federation to this new development, but manages to launch a daring escape with the help of 2 Romulan defectors, Laris and Zhaban. Meanwhile, the governor of the colony contacts Picard's ship, the Verity, and convinces them to let her aboard, where she manages to seize control of the ship. So this comic begins with some of Picard's memoirs, when he was Locutus of Borg, when he learned to play the Resican flute when he was trapped inside the alien probe from the Inner Light, and also when he was captured by the Cardassians and forced to say how many lights there were. Of course, there were only 4 lights, and not to mention his experiences with the Borg Queen from First Contact. And he reminisces that he's been through a lot of trying and troubling events throughout his career, but he always has to look beyond moments of despair and just fight to get through those tough times in his career. We then go to the Romulan colony on Yet Beta, where a couple of Romulans in like a security surveillance room are talking about the native inhabitants they've just slaughtered and how they will defeat the human spies as well. At this point, our Romulan friend Zhaban, who we know is on the side of Picard and Raffi, comes into the surveillance room, where we have Picard and Raffi in handcuffs, and he is delivering these guys to the Romulan surveillance officers. He says he's bought them as a tribute to the Empire, and Picard quite cheekily requests to use the communicator to contact his ship. At this point, the Romulans, although are a little bit confused by Picard's cheekiness, start to cotton on to a subterfuge by Picard here, at which point Zhaban draws a disruptor and blasts the 2 Romulan officers. Picard and Raffi are now free, and Zhaban gets on the communication system inside this Romulan communications room and contacts the Verity, which is in orbit of the planet. The Romulan governor, who's still in command of the Verity, working out of Picard's ready room, speaks to Picard on the comm system, and Picard asks, what the hell's going on? Where's my crew? Where is the lieutenant in charge? And the governor basically says he has been incapacitated for now, he couldn't cope, and he was a bit hopeless, or something to that effect. And Picard says to her, you're pretty cocky if you think you can take over and hijack a Federation vessel. It's not that easy. And the Romulan governor, she's very cocky and she thinks she's got everything under control. And she asks Picard for the command codes for the Verity. And Picard says, I'm not giving those to you. Don't be stupid. And he's confident of his crew being able to retake command of the ship. At which point the Romulans suddenly are caught in a transporter beam and they're beamed out of Picard's ready room. There's a communications over the comm from another Starfleet officer on board the Verity to say that the Romulan intruders have been transported to the brig. Picard is happy about this, and he says for the Verity to stand by. Picard then asks Laris and Zhaban to join him back on the Verity. They've obviously stuck their necks out for Picard in quite a big way here, and they've betrayed not only the Tal Shiar, but they've also betrayed the Romulan people by siding with the Federation. So Picard says, come back to the Verity where you'll be safe. So Picard and Raffi and Laris and Zhaban, they've been back to the Verity, which is now back in command again by the Starfleet officers and the lieutenant that lost control earlier. And the lieutenant's a bit embarrassed. He apologises to Picard for, being a bit gullible, and Picard kind of gives him a bit of confidence, saying, "Don't worry, you offered to help people in need. That's a good thing. Don't feel too bad about yourself. We've all been betrayed before." And Picard welcomes Laris and Zhaban on board the Verity. Our next scene takes place in the brig of the Verity, where Picard is talking to the Romulan governor. She's all being very serious, saying you think you've won, and she's not very happy about being held in the brig here, and that Picard's just come to gloat. But Picard says he only ever came to save lives, as many lives as he possibly could, whether they be Romulan or the native inhabitants of the planet, and he still intends to do that, despite being betrayed by the Romulan governor and her people. But this Romulan governor, she's very set in her ways, and she is under the belief that all the Federation wants to do is undermine the Romulan Empire and conquer it. Whereas Picard is trying to assure her that his motives and the Federation's motives were always honourable, and it's the paranoia and distrust of the Romulan people that have led them to this very sad state of affairs. And Picard says to her, "Hey, if we wanted to undermine you and to conquer you, all we needed to do was wait for the supernova to take you guys out, and we could just walk straight in and take over the whole system." But that's not been the case at all. We've been looking to help you guys right from the start, and it's just ridiculous that you've been so distrusting. At which point, Picard gets a message over the comm system where Raffi is in command on the bridge, and she says that there is something incoming, at which point a Romulan ship appears right next to the Verity in orbit of the planet. But at this point, they're not sure whether the ship has hostile intentions or friendly intentions. Picard says to open a channel of communications to the Romulan vessel, and asks the occupants to identify themselves. At which point, the commander of the Romulan vessel tells Picard that his mission is over and he's failed. And it seems that this ship is here on behalf of the Tal Shiar, and they do not answer to the Romulan Senate. So Picard says, hey, that's okay, because I've got two agents of the Tal Shiar here with me right now, Laris and Zhaban. So Picard is definitely trying to de-escalate tensions here. And Zhaban gets in contact with the Romulans on board the Tal Shiar vessel, and the communication from the Romulan vessel says, "Agents Noctis and Avem, is your task complete?" And Picard's a bit confused because, as far as he's concerned, he's been talking to Laris and Zhaban, not Noctis and Avem. Who's this Noctis and Avem? Now Zhaban says, "I am in control of the ship's functions," and Zhaban presses a few buttons and looks to be taking over the control of the Verity, whereby Laris jumps in and says, "Zhaban, you swore to me you wouldn't do this." And then here we find out that it was the mission of Zhaban and Laris all along to take over Federation ships when they came to rescue the inhabitants of the planet. This was their mission right from the start. And it was always their goal to take over and destroy the ship that showed up to give support. At which point the Romulan vessel orders Zhaban to initiate a self-destruct sequence, and Laris is not happy about this at all. So it now seems to look like Zhaban was always working with the Romulans and the Tal Shiar, whereas Laris is very much sided with the Federation on this issue. At this point, two Romulan warbirds decloak right next to the Verity above the planet. Over the communication system, Picard speaks to the Romulan commander on board these new warbirds that have just decloaked, and he says, "Oh, it's so happy to see you guys. I enjoyed working with you on previous relocation missions and evacuations that I've been helping you guys out with recently, and I'm glad you showed up." So it seems like there's a previous relationship here with Picard and these other ships that have just shown up to aid support in this effort. At which point Picard mentions that as soon as he reboarded the Verity, he immediately sent out a message to these Romulan ships that he'd obviously had a working relationship with in the past in terms of the evacuation effort that's been going on. And they've arrived just in time to help him solve this problem. And it's at this point that Picard asks Zhaban, "Can I have my ship back, please, now?" However, the Tal Shiar ship is still in communication with Zhaban and is ordering them to complete their mission, take over the Verity, and to complete the self-destruct sequence. And it's at this point that Zhaban has a change of heart. He sees Picard dealing with these Romulans, and he understands how much effort he's been putting into the whole relocation effort of Romulus, and how many people Picard has actually saved in terms of evacuating the various planets in the path of the supernova. So all of a sudden, Zhaban's had a change of heart. He now realizes how much work has gone into this relocation effort, and his opinion on Picard and the Federation has suddenly changed dramatically. No longer does he believe it's all a big plot to take over the Federation, and he understands just what is trying to be achieved here. Zhaban feels foolish, he says he's sorry to Laris, and he gives Picard control of the Verity back again. So now it seems like everything's been resolved. Picard's got his ship back, Raffi and Picard are back on the planet, just tidying up a few loose ends. The Romulan governor has been taken into custody and will be prosecuted for what she's done. An order has been restored now in the colony. Picard said Geordi has got his resettlement ships that are en route to the planet to evacuate the citizens and the colonists there. But Raffi reminds him that the Tal Shiar are still out there looking to attack the Federation and are distrusting of their motives, and that they'll never kind of trust them in any kind of meaningful way. Picard and Raffi are looking over the burnt remnants of the wine vineyard that was destroyed in the fire, and he sees Laris and Zhaban once more, where he thanks them for assisting with the evacuation, and that Laris knows that they can't return to the planet ever again. And they also can't return to Romulan space. They've betrayed the Tal Shiar, and that no place is safe for them anymore. And it's at this point that Picard says he knows a place they'll be secure and they'll be safe, and away from any potential retribution, and he asks them are they still interested in winemaking. So he's obviously offering them a job to come and work for him at Chateau Picard on Earth. Now we go to Mars at the Utopia Planitia shipyards, where Geordi LaForge is receiving a message from somebody, which obviously turns out to be Picard. Geordi asks him how things are going with the evacuation, and Picard says there's been quite a few complications since last time they spoke, but everything is looking bright in the future. So the story surprised me a little bit in this comic. I thought we would see a lot more to do with the native inhabitants and the Federation, and I kind of thought that where the direction of the story was going was definitely going to go more in the direction of the Federation abandoning the local inhabitants of this planet in preference to the Romulans. But that's not how it kind of played out at all. This last issue in the comic really just cemented the relationship between Picard and Laris and Zhaban, and gave a bit more insight and clarity as to where that relationship originated from. I really did think we were going to get more of a insight into Picard's reasoning and backstory in terms of why he decided to leave Starfleet. We kind of know from the first episode and also other material that's been shown to us that one of the catalyzing events for him leaving Starfleet was the abandonment of the Romulan people, but I really thought that this would come into play more in this comic. We saw in episode 1 that Picard's main reasoning for leaving Starfleet was the fact that the Federation abandoned a lot of the Romulan people when it came to evacuating their planets, and I really thought that would have played more into the last issue of these comic series, but it really didn't have that much to do with it at all. This story was more of a backstory in terms of the relationship between Picard and Laris and Zhaban. So I was kind of a bit surprised by that. I also thought we might have gotten more of a look at the whole evacuation effort and all the ships that were being created by Geordi at Utopia Planitia, and how that might have actually played out on more of a galactic scale. I kind of thought there would be a bit more of a sense of grandeur about this last aspect to the story. So what did you guys think of the story? Did it resolve itself to your satisfaction? Do you think it could have been handled in a better way? Or were you rapt at how this whole comic series played out? How do you think it might impact the Star Trek Picard series? Leave a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video, and I'll see you guys next time.